Thank you very much, Bill. Good news, everybody. I'm not going to synthesise and summarise everything. But I am going to say thank you to the Philippines government for organising this, and also to all the private sector participants. Philippines this year has been brilliant, if not inclusive, at organising such events and getting us information into the APEC system that we otherwise might not have. It's, of course, been a slightly different year for APEC, because until now we've really focused very much on that trade-driven growth that's driven the economies of this region in a way that the rest of the world has yet to see and often been very envious of. But this year, Philippines has put a different sort of picture over it by saying they want an overarching theme of inclusive economy. And how do we deal with that? It's very easy to talk about inclusive economy. Actually, we do measure inclusive economies in a number of different ways. And one of the things over the next week that you may hear about is the Policy Support Unit of APEC will be producing a very interesting report indicating how trade impacts inclusiveness. It doesn't all happen in one direction. It's not all good news, but going into some of those details. The way that we've dealt with inclusive economy in APEC has been to say we're interested in those parts of the economy that don't necessarily get easy access to the integrated, open competitiveness of this buzzing region. And so Philippines has led a lot of discussion about some of the areas that are less than well integrated into the APEC economy. And three big examples for those have been small and medium enterprises. And we've been looking a lot at things like how new electronic technologies, how clipping into new supply chains, how ensuring that trade facilitation and free trade areas are really focused on the needs of small and micro, not just big. Also, services sector, which of course has always been a strength for the Philippines. And I'd say also women in the economy. Did you know that in this country, this is the only country, as far as I can see, where women own most of the businesses? So there's been a big focus. No, I think men have got to do better. So that's been our way that we've looked at inclusive economy. Now we've had another angle on it as well, which is inclusive business. So we've heard that with a lot of interest as to just what that might bring. And I mean, I had to learn what is meant by inclusive business. I'm a little bit fuzzy, still about corporate social responsibility, shared value, social enterprise, philanthropy, but you're saying inclusive business is different from that. I'm understanding you to say it's where businesses buy from or hire from or sell to others who might be classified as bottom of a pyramid. But it's not so much governments doing things, it's business doing things. And that ran right through the discussion, both from the private sector discussants and the public sector ones. Does it work? Well, I'm the cynical one who did that very first message saying, can you make money from inclusive business? I'm obviously not the only person in the room who was wondering about that, because a lot of you said yes, you also wanted an answer to that question. Well, we got an answer from that first panel, a very clear answer that in those particular circumstances, yes, you can, and it can be part of corporate behaviour, and that was very interesting for us to learn that. What should government do? Well, the business panel said a couple of things. They said infrastructure, yes, and we're doing a lot on that in APEC. They said clear policies, and then I think they also said hands off, and we hear that as well, but this is primarily different from what a lot of APEC does. A lot of APEC is government to business. It's not business to business. And indeed, we're limited just what we can and should be doing in terms of business to business. But this is a lead from business sector about what can happen. Well, can we contribute? My role as Executive Director of the APEC Secretariat is I do get to see the many initiatives that APEC does, and there's actually several hundred of them. It's a big, complex system. And also to ask some hard questions about should we be doing things or not doing things. And in this area, in inclusive business, we have to be cautious about what APEC can reasonably do. First of all, does it have business involvement and business buy-in? Well, we heard in this particular case very clearly yes, and we heard also from ABAC that it's been in the ABAC agenda, but it needs to stay in the ABAC agenda, or else we won't be picking it up and running with it just on our own. Also another question, does it interest developed as well as developing economies? Now, all the examples we heard about were developing economies, even the presentation from Japan. And for APEC, we are a combination of 21 small and large market and less market, developed and developing, and really, for us, projects need to have the interest of all of those members, and that's something to think about, and we do need to hear a bit more about that. Is APEC the right organisation? We're not a development bank, and we're also not a poverty reduction agency, primarily. What do? We spread best practice and communicate best practice in those standalone areas that we're operating in. And in those interconnected areas we're operating in, we help find harmonised systems, common platforms, integrated ways of making things fit together in a similar way so that we don't have an American system, a Chinese system, a Japanese system, a something else system. We have systems that work together and can interconnect appropriately. So I think that is a question for us. Now, we also do certify processes where we find good processes that can work more generally, and I'm sure there are things that we can do. I think we're also something of a test kitchen. That's been our history. Initially around border issues, trade facilitation, then behind the border, business facilitation, and a lot of the good ideas you'll see around WTO, TPP, things like that, did start in APEC, and that's what we still continue to be quite good at, but that's because we are a voluntary consensus-driven organisation. And again, that's something where we can help spread word on inclusive business, but we can't just do or order inclusive business. One thing we didn't hear very much of today was that this has already been discussed in APEC in the investment experts group. We heard a bit from our Japanese colleague on that. And actually, the investment experts group, led partly from the Philippines, did develop quite a bit of material there, and it's there on their website that you can see. And in addition, some of this was discussed also in our policy partnership on women in the economy last month. So there has been some discussion about it. Where could it go from there? Well, I can certainly think of a number of areas that APEC could be interested in. We did take note of what you said on policy partnership, on food security in Peru next year. That is a possibility. We can also think of a number of other areas of work we're working on in energy, mining, rural product study, smallholders and global value chains, and regulatory reform, as Carlos said, where we could also see it tied in more closely. But for us to take it forward, certain things do need to happen. In the next couple of days, senior officials will be meeting here in Manila, and they'll have to consider how they want to handle this issue of inclusive business, whether they want to promote it through to ministers and have it in the minister's statement. There's already provision for this, but final decisions still have to be taken on that. And then it actually needs to have a home in terms of the working groups and where that might be actually moved forward. Philippines has shown a lot of leadership in all of this, but it's only going to go forward if the next host for APEC is interested in showing that as well, and that will be Peru. And at this stage, I've got the pleasure of handing over to Peru Ambassador Denegri to close this. Thank you very much, everybody.